When you react, they own you. But when you stay calm, quiet, and unreadable, they begin to fear what you might do. Watch this video to master the aura that makes people think twice. Power does not begin with what you say. It begins with what you do not. Long before you open your mouth, before you explain, defend, or argue, there is something else that people notice. It is the quiet space around you, the aura that surrounds you without effort, the invisible weapon that can make people think twice before they dare to cross you. Most people never discover this truth because they are too busy chasing approval. They want to be liked, to be understood, to be accepted, and so they explain themselves, they prove themselves, they pour out words like water from a broken jar. But in doing so, they weaken the very thing that could have made them untouchable. Silence. The invisible weapon is not anger, not threat, not even strength. It is the calm refusal to react. When someone tests you, the average person reacts fast. They defend their name, their choices, their worth. They think this shows strength, but in reality it reveals weakness. It shows that someone else has the power to move you, to shift your state, to shake your calm. The one who controls your reaction controls you. But the one who never moves, the one who holds stillness like armor, that person creates fear without a word. Because people cannot fight what they cannot touch, and nothing is harder to touch than a man who refuses to flinch. Think of a room where tension rises. One person mocks another, laughter spreads, eyes turn. Most would stammer out a defense, try to smooth the air, try to laugh it off. But the man who understands the invisible weapon does something else. He does nothing. He holds the silence, lets the air burn, lets the weight of his stillness shift the room. And suddenly, it is not him under the spotlight, but the one who mocked him. Because now everyone is watching not the insult, but the lack of reaction. The calm face, the relaxed posture, the still eyes. This is power. It does not shout. It does not explain. It does not prove. It simply exists, and by existing unmoved, it makes everyone else uneasy. The truth is that people fear what they cannot predict. They can predict anger. They can predict defense. They can predict panic. But they cannot predict stillness. When you give them nothing, their own mind begins to race. They fill the silence with stories. They wonder what you are thinking, what you might do, what you might know. Their imagination becomes your weapon. They destroy their own confidence, trying to guess your next move. And you never had to move at all. The invisible weapon is not about pretending to be above people. It is about being immune to their pull. When they try to provoke and you remain steady, you show that their games do not reach you. That is what makes people cautious. Not your words, not your arguments, not your strength, but your silence. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is presence. And presence is what makes people afraid to cross you. Every room you walk into, people measure you, and they do it long before you ever speak. They look at how you carry yourself, how you move, how you sit, and even how you breathe. The average person hurries, shifts nervously, fidgets with their hands, fills silence with empty words, and reveals more than they know. But the one who understands power does the opposite. Calm stillness, unhurried movements, and an unreadable face build something far greater than charm or explanation. They build an aura, and that aura becomes untouchable. People cannot attack what they cannot define, and when they cannot read you, they begin to imagine. That imagination is not harmless. It becomes fear. Fear does not come from what you show, it comes from what you refuse to show. The loud man, the defensive man, the nervous man, all of them reveal their limits. But the man who remains calm, the one who seems above the noise, unsettles everyone. They start asking silent questions. Does he know something I don't? Is he stronger than me? What will he do if I push him? The lack of reaction forces their minds to fill in blanks, and the human mind always fills those blanks with the worst-case scenario. This is why the aura of untouchability is so powerful. You do not need to prove you are dangerous, they will convince themselves you are. Think of the leaders who never rush to speak, the ones who let others argue, shout, and scramble while they sit quietly, waiting. When they finally say a single sentence, the entire room leans in. Not because the words are magical, but because they were so rare. Scarcity creates value. If you speak all the time, your voice loses weight. If you stay quiet until it matters, every word becomes heavy. The aura of untouchability is not built on noise, it is built on restraint. Even your body adds to this field of power. The way you hold your eyes steady when someone looks at you, the way you pause before moving, the way you take up space without rushing or shrinking. These are signals people read without even knowing it. You don't have to threaten anyone. You don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to explain. The way you exist tells people everything they need to know. It tells them you cannot be easily touched, and that alone is enough to make them careful. The truth is that people are always watching for weakness. They want to see if they can make you flinch, if they can make you justify, if they can make you react. The aura of untouchability denies them all of that. It starves them of what they crave most, your reaction, and when they cannot get it, they feel powerless. They hesitate, they second, guess, they turn their own energy inward. You did nothing but hold your ground, and already you have won. Because the man who cannot be read cannot be controlled, and that is why silence and stillness will always be stronger than any defense. Weak men flinch at insults, strong men don't, and that simple difference separates those who can be crossed from those who must be feared. The flinch is small, sometimes only a twitch in the eyes, a shift in the mouth, or a tightening in the shoulders, but people notice it. They might not say it out loud, yet they register it immediately. The flinch tells the room that the insult landed, that the words found a target, that the one being tested cares. And once people know you can be touched, they will keep pushing. They will dig deeper, press harder, and take control of the frame. It never starts with a big move, it always starts with the flinch. The man who refuses to blink changes the game before it even begins. When he is tested with a jab, a smirk, or a challenge, and he holds perfectly still, he creates an uncomfortable silence that shifts the weight back onto the attacker. Suddenly, it is not the accused who feels the eyes of the room, but the accuser. Everyone begins to notice the imbalance, the nervous energy, the force that came from one side but failed to stir the other. The one who spoke looks foolish, exposed, insecure, while the one who stayed calm looks untouchable. Fear does not come from showing your strength. It comes from showing you cannot be moved. Most people react out of habit. They were trained from childhood to defend themselves, to explain, to prove they are not guilty of the insult thrown at them. But all defense, no matter how noble, is weakness in disguise. The more you argue, the more you reveal you were affected, and the more the attacker grows in confidence. The true operator knows better. He understands that insults are not meant to be answered, they are meant to test. And the one who passes the test is not the one with the sharpest comeback, but the one with no reaction at all. Picture a man in a meeting being called arrogant in front of others. The weak man laughs nervously, or tries to insist he is humble. The strong man stays still, silent, maybe even lets a small pause hang in the air. That pause is deadly because it makes everyone else think. They wonder if the insult was out of line, if the speaker went too far, if they themselves might be judged for watching. The insult dies not because it was argued against, but because it was starved of reaction. The one who remained calm walks out stronger than before, his silence telling the world he cannot be shaken. The flinch test happens everywhere, in business, in relationships, in public. People poke, they prod, they provoke, just to see if you will move. Your job is not to fight back, your job is to stay still. Because the man who cannot be moved becomes something more than strong. He becomes untouchable. And untouchable men are not mocked twice. An insult, a jab, a challenge, these are traps most people walk straight into without thinking. The moment someone throws shade, the average person feels the urge to reply, to defend, to argue back. They want to protect their name, to show the room they are not weak, to prove they are in control. But in reality, every word they speak gives away their power. The truth is simple. Silence is sharper than any comeback, and it cuts deeper because it does not even acknowledge the attack. When someone insults you, they are not searching for truth. They are searching for reaction. They want to see you move, stumble, or break your calm. If you give them that, even in the form of an explanation, they win. They have pulled you onto their ground and forced you to play their game. But if you leave their words hanging in the air, untouched and unanswered, you flip the frame entirely. Suddenly it is not you who looks unsettled. It is them. The silence begins to burn, not on your side, but on theirs. Silence forces people to feel the weight of their own insecurity. Every second you do not respond is a mirror held in front of them. They begin to wonder if they went too far, if they revealed too much, if they exposed their jealousy or their weakness. The more they try to stand tall, the smaller they feel, because nothing is louder than a silence that will not break. What started as their attempt to control you ends with them questioning themselves. Most people are addicted to noise. They cannot stand stillness because stillness exposes them. They laugh too much, explain too much, talk too much, and in that flood of words they show exactly where they are weak. The person who can remain silent while being provoked creates a presence that cannot be touched. It is not passive. It is not avoidance. It is a deliberate act of power. The one who says nothing controls the tempo of the room. Think of a public setting where someone takes a shot at you. Everyone looks at you, waiting for your reaction. The crowd expects a comeback or a defense. But instead, you remain calm, eyes steady, posture relaxed, lips sealed. In that moment, the air changes. People stop looking at you and start looking at the one who spoke. They wait for them to fill the silence, to explain their words, to justify themselves. The energy shifts, and you win without lifting a finger. Silence makes the attacker look desperate, while you look untouchable. They may try again, louder this time, pushing harder. But the more they repeat themselves, the more unstable they appear. Meanwhile, your stillness only grows heavier. The room begins to see the difference. One person rattled and overexposed, the other calm and unshaken. That contrast is what builds fear, because people realize that if words cannot move you, then nothing can. And a man who cannot be moved is a man no one dares to cross. You don't need to argue, and you don't need to deny, because the moment you step into that game, you are already playing by their rules. Most people believe strength means meeting an accusation head-on, proving it false, showing evidence, explaining until they are cleared. But this is not strength, it is surrender. To argue is to admit that the words thrown at you matter. To deny is to show you felt the sting. But the true strategist knows better. He twists the accusation into a mirror and hands it back without a word. They say you are arrogant. You don't flinch. You don't rush. You don't try to convince them otherwise. You let the words hang, maybe even allow a faint smile to touch your face, the kind of smile that makes people second-guess themselves. Now the word arrogant is no longer about you, it is about them. They look insecure for needing to say it. They look small for trying to bring you down. And the crowd sees it. The one who accused ends up looking more guilty than the one accused. They say you are cold. You let it float in the air without defense. Coldness is only threatening to those who need warmth, and by not answering, you make them reveal what they lack. The room begins to see not a man who is cold, but a person who feels neglected, bitter, fragile. Their words tell the story of their own weakness, not yours, because every attack is a confession. What someone accuses you of is often what they fear in themselves, or what they cannot control in you. The more they push, the weaker they look. Each repeated jab becomes an echo of their own insecurity. They wanted you to look guilty, but now they look obsessed. They wanted you to stumble, but now they stumble over their own words, trying to prove a point that no longer sticks. By staying calm, by refusing to argue, you force them to expose themselves. The crowd doesn't remember your silence as weakness. They remember the desperation of the one who kept talking. Think of it as a judo throw of the mind. You never block their strike head-on. You never meet it with force. You simply let the weight of their own energy carry them down. They swing hard, expecting to hurt you, but find themselves off balance, exposed and embarrassed. You gave them nothing, yet they lost everything. This is how you build an aura of untouchability. Not by proving you are right, not by clearing your name, but by turning every word thrown at you into evidence against the one who spoke. It requires restraint, it requires patience, and it requires the ability to let others destroy themselves. But once you master it, you never need to defend again, because every attempt to attack you only makes them smaller and you stronger. People project their own fears when they face someone who will not break character, and this is where true power lives. The average person is used to battles of words, quick defenses, sharp replies, loud protests. They know how to fight someone who reacts, but they do not know how to handle someone who gives them nothing. When you remain steady, calm, and unreadable, they begin to turn their own energy inward. They start explaining themselves without being asked. They repeat the same points, they pile on justifications, and in doing so, they reveal their insecurity. You never raised your voice, you never lifted a finger, but they are already unraveling. Fear is not what you do to them, it is what they do to themselves when your silence gives them no ground to stand on. People cannot handle emptiness. The human mind rushes to fill silence, to explain what is not clear, to give meaning where none has been offered. When you stay silent, they feel the pull of that void. They speak more, they reveal more, and they slowly lose control of themselves. This is the mirror effect, where your stillness reflects their chaos back to them. Think about a conversation where someone challenges you. They accuse, they question, they provoke. Instead of rushing to defend, you stay calm, your face unreadable, your tone steady or even absent. In that moment, something strange begins to happen. The other person starts to feel the weight of their own words. They think maybe they came off too strong. Maybe they sounded bitter, maybe others are now judging them. And so they add more words, trying to soften the blow, trying to clarify, trying to rescue themselves. But the more they talk, the weaker they appear, and you, without doing anything, rise above the exchange. The mirror effect works because people cannot escape themselves. When you do not give them a reaction, they are forced to wrestle with their own reflection. They start asking questions they cannot answer. Did I go too far? Do I look insecure? Am I embarrassing myself? These thoughts eat away at them while you remain untouched. They came to test you, to shake you, to control you, but all they find is their own instability staring back at them. This power is subtle but devastating. It does not require aggression or defense. It requires discipline. The discipline to hold your stillness while others lose theirs. The patience to let someone talk themselves into weakness. The strength to let silence work in your favor. And when you master it, you will notice a shift. People begin to hesitate before testing you because they remember how uncomfortable it felt last time. They remember how they lost control in front of others while you never moved. They remember the shame of exposing themselves against someone who gave nothing back. The mirror effect teaches you that true fear does not come from threats or anger. It comes from someone who refuses to be touched, who gives no reaction, who leaves others alone with their own doubts. And that fear is stronger than any words you could ever speak. In meetings, at tables, in public settings, most people scramble to be noticed. They talk over one another, fill pauses with noise, and push their opinions forward in the hope of winning approval. They mistake volume for influence and speed for strength. But the truth is, the more they speak, the lighter their words become. The Machiavellian does the opposite. He does not fight for attention, he does not chase recognition, he does not rush to be heard. He waits, he measures, and when he finally chooses to speak, the room shifts. His words cut through the noise, not because they are louder, but because they are rarer. Scarcity makes them powerful. Commanding the room without speaking is not about silence alone. It is about how you carry yourself while you wait. Stillness makes people uneasy. The one who does not fidget, the one who does not hurry, the one who lets others waste their energy while conserving his own, creates a presence that is impossible to ignore. People notice the calm figure who does not compete for space, who seems content to observe, who appears untouchable. They begin to wonder what he is thinking, what he sees, what he knows. Their imagination works harder than your voice ever could. When you finally decide to speak, it should never be rushed, never defensive, never cluttered with excess words. It should be short, precise, and calm. One sentence delivered with clarity has more weight than 100 delivered in panic. This is why the Machiavellian operator allows others to exhaust themselves. He lets them fight for attention, expose their insecurity, and reveal their flaws. Then, with a single statement, he closes the conversation. And everyone remembers his words, not theirs. Fear does not come from constant chatter. It comes from scarcity. People fear what they cannot predict, and they cannot predict someone who rarely speaks. They begin to measure their own words more carefully, wondering if they will be judged by your silence. They tread lightly because your stillness makes them feel exposed. Every pause you allow becomes a mirror, forcing them to hear themselves louder than they intended. And the longer you hold that pause, the more unstable they become. Think of a negotiation, a boardroom, or even a dinner table. The average man fills silence with nervous explanations, but the one who understands power uses silence as a tool. He knows that whoever speaks first often loses leverage, so he waits. He holds his ground. And the silence becomes heavy, unbearable for the other side, until they break it with a concession. This is how rooms are commanded, not by shouting, but by holding control of time itself. The fewer your words, the heavier they land. People respect restraint because it is rare. They cannot ignore you, because they know when you finally choose to speak, it will matter. That anticipation builds weight, and that weight is what makes you dangerous. You do not need to compete for attention. You let attention compete for you. Sometimes the coldest move is not to engage at all, not to answer, not to argue, not even to acknowledge. The world trains you to think that presence is always power, that you must reply to every challenge, that silence or absence shows weakness. But the truth is the opposite. Absence is not weakness, it is strength sharpened to its purest form. To ignore someone who desperately wants your attention is to show them that they are not even worth the effort of a response. It is a declaration without words that says, "You do not matter enough to disturb my calm." And nothing frightens the insecure more than being ignored. People who provoke you crave reaction. They survive on the energy you give them, whether it is anger, defense, or explanation. As long as you respond, they win. Even if you think you have argued better, they have still succeeded in pulling you into their frame, making you play their game. But when you vanish, when you step back and give them nothing, they rage into the void. Their words echo without an audience, and the more they try to shout, the more foolish they look. Absence leaves them trapped with their own noise. They wanted to fight you, but instead they end up fighting themselves. They replay their own words, they doubt themselves, they wonder why you did not answer. They tell others the story, but the more they tell it, the more obvious it becomes that they are obsessed with you while you are untouched by them. They unravel in public while you remain still in private. This is why absence terrifies people more than presence. A direct fight can be measured, but silence and distance cannot be controlled. Think about the power of walking away in the middle of a provocation. Not in anger, not in panic, but in calm indifference. The person left behind feels small, exposed, and powerless because you showed them their entire effort was beneath you. They may try harder, send more words, create more drama, but with each attempt, they only reveal how little control they have. The crowd watching sees the same thing. They see one person desperate for attention and another too elevated to care. And in that contrast, true power is revealed. Absence is an art because it requires discipline. It is easy to strike back, easy to argue, easy to defend yourself. It is hard to resist the urge, to let the silence speak, to step away and stay away. But once you master it, you discover that absence speaks louder than words. It tells the world you do not need to fight to prove your strength. You prove it by refusing to play at all. And over time, this creates a reputation that is far more valuable than approval. People begin to think twice before crossing you, not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't. The final evolution is not silence alone. It is something greater, something harder to touch, something that lingers even when you say nothing. It is aura, the invisible weight that follows you into every room and shapes the way people feel around you. Aura is not built by words. It is built by restraint, by the choice to remain calm when others lose control, by the refusal to defend when attacked, by the discipline to never explain more than you must. Over time, this builds into a presence that does not need to argue to be respected. People sense it before they even realize it. They second-guess themselves before speaking. They hesitate before trying to cross you, because they have learned one truth: you don't fight back, you don't defend, you don't explain. You simply exist above the noise, and that alone makes you dangerous. Aura is stronger than reputation. A reputation can be questioned, debated, even attacked, but aura is harder to touch because it does not come from what others say about you. It comes from how you carry yourself. You may be misunderstood, you may be called names, you may be accused, but the way you remain still while storms rise around you turns those accusations into background noise. People remember not the words thrown at you, but the way you stood untouched. In time, they stop focusing on whether the claims are true and instead wonder why you never felt the need to answer. That wondering turns into caution, and that caution is power. You build aura by training yourself to let go of the need for approval. The man who must always be liked, who must always clear his name, who must always explain himself, can never build it. His words betray his weakness, his defenses make him predictable, his desire to be understood keeps him tied to the judgment of others. But the one who can live without approval, who can let people misunderstand, who can carry on without explaining, begins to grow untouchable. Because nothing can be taken from a man who no longer chases validation. Imagine walking into a meeting, a dinner, or even a casual room where everyone speaks quickly, eager to be noticed. You say nothing at first. You listen. You measure. You let the noise pass. When you finally choose to speak, your words are deliberate and calm. Everyone leans in, not because you demanded attention, but because your silence made them wait for it. This is aura. It is not about proving yourself. It is about creating weight through scarcity. The fewer your words, the heavier they land, and the less you defend yourself, the more untouchable you become. Aura is the quiet certainty that you do not answer to anyone, not because you are stubborn, but because you know your value does not depend on explanation. It makes people cautious around you, it makes them careful with their words, and it makes them fear crossing you even before they try. Because they know one thing: you will never step down into their noise. You stand above it, and that alone makes you untouchable. Maybe this video helped you see yourself or someone you know in a different way. Feel free to let us know via a like or in the comments. And if you want more wisdom and guidance in becoming a better version of yourself, subscribe now. This is the moment to start becoming the person you really want to be.